So, what do we want when we go out to eat? Well, I want good food delivered promptly with a good attitude. Do I care if it's prepared by a machine? How about if it's delivered by a robot? I guess personally, I prefer human interaction, but am I typical? Well, this week we're going to find out. We're going to talk about how technology should and could and would and is being integrated into restaurants and what customers say that they want from automation when they go out to eat. We're going to talk about that right now on everything we know about retail. Hello, my name is James Cook. I'm coming to you from Indiana, and this is everything we know about retail. We broadcast live on the internet most Thursdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. But you can watch us anytime at everythingweknow.show. Today, we're talking about automation in restaurants and what diners think about it. So we've got two guests to talk about that. So let's meet them. We've got Emily Albright Miller and Ashley Rowland from Big Red Rooster. Welcome, Emily and Ashley.
Hi, James. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. So you guys are joining from Columbus, Ohio, where Big Red Rooster is based. I should say Big Red Rooster is a JLL company. So we're all JLL employees, but you guys are like part of the cool group that has your own thing going on at Big Red Rooster. Is that fair to say?
Oh, I think we're all cool, but we do get to do some pretty cool work designing brand experiences for a lot of different clients.
Yeah, that's right. So in a nutshell, when somebody says, what you design brand experiences, like what does that mean? How do you explain that?
Yeah, we think about them in a multi-dimensional sense. So a lot of our brand experiences do manifest themselves in physical environments, but we're constantly thinking about that shopper journey end to end and the role of digital at every step of the way.
What's a cool brand experience that Big Red Rooster has designed that you guys are proud of?
Well, we've been working with American Express for a really long time, and we've actually designed all of their travel lounges globally. And so, if you are lucky enough to be a Centurion card member and you get to go into one of those experiences, those are phenomenal experiences from every dimension of that brand. So the food and the service and the digital all coming together in these retail lounges. But we do a lot of restaurant experiences too. So we're going to focus today on talking about automation in restaurants because we're learning a lot from our clients and with our clients about how the landscape is changing as it relates to automation.
Well, perfect segue. Here's the report that you've recently released, Automation in Restaurants, the ROE of Human and Machine. So I should say this is available for free download at bigredrooster.com if folks want to check it out. Why is now a time that you release a report about automation?
So kind of two things led us to this topic. The first is that the great resignation that we've all been hearing about for a while, those labor shortages are not going away. So our clients are innovating and trying to come up with solutions, and automation has become a very hot topic in almost every single one of our conversations about what's next in the store, the restaurant environment. So we're hearing about that, but at the same time, we've also been doing a lot of research around consumer behaviors, and we all know so much has changed in the last couple years. Now we've got people ordering online groceries in record numbers, and almost everybody has done some sort of curbside pickup in one environment or another. We've got third-party delivery apps exploding in popularity, and so when we've been talking about automation, it's not necessarily new. I mean, there's certainly new technology out there, but it's been around for a while, and we're kind of wondering, is now the time, right? Are we ready? are we all ready now for robots and automation in our restaurants?
I mean, it's certainly a time where it's starting to make economic sense. If I'm a restaurant operator, just my cost of labor and the availability of labor is, as you said, it's just limited. And it's kind of like, oh, suddenly this, what I thought was an expensive robot suddenly seems appealing. So is that why why automation is appealing to operators? It's just about the money, basically.
Yeah, and also the expectations around speed and convenience. So those are things that, pandemic or no pandemic, we all are wanting things faster. We are wanting things to be more convenient and more on our terms. So I think you've got all of those things colliding, because if I need to support a 4-lane drive-through at a restaurant and make it fast, I have to be looking at things like automation, because that's simply the only way to accelerate things to the point, from an operational perspective, that they need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So I think that, after reading your report, and I sort of knew this intuitively, that different generational groups had different points of view about automation. Like, I know for me personally, I'm Gen X, so I'm like in the middle. And a lot of times I'm like, I only want human interaction. I want that authentic human interaction. Yet when I get to a place that automation makes things faster, I usually appreciate it. So what do the different generations feel? Is it really simple? Is it like, just older people don't like technology, that kind of thing?
I think it's more nuanced than that. I would hate to say that as a blanket statement about all baby boomers, but from this research, we did sort of learn that most of the excitement and the fascination is and the confidence when they see technology is coming from the younger generations like Gen Z and millennials, which, like you said, it's sort of intuitive. We grew up with technology, so it's um, almost second nature to us. But everyone has been forced to adopt this technology over the last couple years. I mean, my parents and others whom I never thought would download apps and order from Uber Eats are doing that. And so there's not so much apprehension anymore among those older generations. But if you ask them the question, do you prefer humans or technology in certain aspects of the experience, they do tend to bias toward human. And the rest of us younger generations tend to be a little bit more open to technology like robots.
So there's sort of, a restaurant is really split into two places. It's the front of the house, the customer facing, and then the back of the house. What are the implications there for technology between those front and back of the restaurant?
That's a good question. We just talked about the same topic with a client very recently. Technology has always been, I think, sort of an invisible behind the scenes partner. I mean, it's always been there in our POS systems and our menu boards, but now I think this topic is making us wonder and question how visible we can make it. Can we remove that cloak and put it out into the dining room, and will people be open to that? I think that we can, but it's a matter of considering what type of restaurant we are and what type of consumer that we're attracting or trying to attract. Younger consumers who are okay with seeing it out in the open and interacting with a robot who might, I don't know, deliver the food to the table or bust the table when I'm done and I've left a mess, then maybe it makes sense to have some technology like that. But if we're in a type of restaurant or have a type of customer who says, I don't really want to see it, but I'm cool with it being there, then we have to consider that in the way that we design it into the experience, because perhaps in an experience like that, it makes sense to keep it a little bit more invisible, to have it in the kitchen or the back of house, like you mentioned, and not have it be so seen, but have it be a really integral part of the experience to help increase our efficiency and work harmoniously with our employees.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just another piece of technology, right? It's like, why would I get upset about somebody having an automatic dishwasher in the back of the house or something? So it sounds like people are more comfortable with it in the back of the house than the front of the house. What are some examples of how these robots are? I mean, is it like a full robot chef, or what's the deal?
Yeah, there's a whole spectrum. There's a couple examples that we talked about in the report. I think one really good one is White Castle, which is really impressive because White Castle is the oldest restaurant in the country. It's been around for so long, and yet they have such an innovator's mindset that they were among the first to adopt this robotic system. They use one called Flippy. Flippy started as a fry cook behind the scenes. It's evolved. There's a 2.0 prototype now because it was so successful. Flippy takes some of those menial tasks in the kitchen, like flipping fries or flipping burgers, namely fries in the example that we cite here, because it's something that it doesn't require, it's not artful. It doesn't require a lot of skill. It's something that it could free up employees to do other things that are more critical to the experience, that are more customer facing, perhaps, because we know that the parts of the experience that people want to interact with a human in is the greeting when they walk in, and it's that handoff of their food, and maybe it's that final preparation of food because it requires some craftsmanship and some sort of preciousness, whereas something like flipping fries just requires a precise timed touch, and a robot can totally take that behavior on, and behind the scenes it's not going to offend anyone who doesn't necessarily believe in robotics. So I think that they're a wonderful example.
One of my favorite things is the company that has that is responsible for Flippy is also responsible for Sippy, which is
yeah,
the automated drink machine.
yes.
Miso Robotics is the company, and actually a lot of restaurants. Jack in the Box is one of our clients, and they publicly announced last week that they're investing in these technologies too. So it's becoming far more pervasive.
It's so funny. We talked about Miso Robotics last week, so I have some videos loaded in here. This is Flippy 2 working a fry station, and then what we didn't talk about was Chippy that Chipotle is testing right now that makes tortilla chips. Yeah, this Miso Robotics seems to be like all over it. Yeah, very cool. And just as an aside, their business model is you lease the robots, you don't buy them, which is great for an operator because you're not making that huge investment in a robot. Plus you get as part of the lease, you get like tech support and all that stuff. Okay, so automation, does it affect how I feel about the brand? Does it make me more or less loyal? What would you find there?
We didn't ask that question explicitly in that way, but the way that we, I think, can interpret the results is that loyalty is sort of in a perilous state right now in the restaurant industry. As restaurants closed, as they had to shift their model to adopt third-party apps like Uber Eats and Grubhub, like the example of my parents that I mentioned earlier, loyalty seems to be shifting a little bit among certain generations in particular. So we asked the question, are you more loyal to delivery apps now than you are to restaurants? And younger generations like millennials and Gen Z, the percentage was much higher for those who said yes. So I guess, to win back customers like that, it's continuing to adopt automative technologies that make their experience better and faster and easier and more accurate. But it's getting them back into the physical environment and, I guess, shifting that loyalty back to the brand itself and away from third-party systems and technologies that they've adopted over the last couple of years. It's also about, I think, getting that ratio right. So certain sectors, people expect technology, like fast food and fast casual, because it's such a fast experience, or so it should be. But other restaurant types, like fine dining and casual dining, people expect that less. So if you get that technology ratio wrong, if you design out the human and design too much machine into it, you could turn off some of your customers, and you could then compromise, I think, that loyalty that they've had. So it's about designing a space that gets that combination correct, which is why we said it's not human or machine. It's whatever that right combination is of human and machine in the end.
Yeah, like if I went into a fancy restaurant and they asked me to scan a QR code to look at the menu, I'd be like, no way. I want a huge fancy menu with like a leather bound, edition with thick pages and, embossed and all that. Yeah, that's definitely, you've got to have the right technology for the right restaurant. So I've been to a few restaurants that have no human interaction. There was one, I think it's defunct now, called Eatsa that was in San Francisco. There's one called Cafe X. That's a robot that makes coffee that they're currently at San Francisco airport. And they have a couple of other locations. Do you think that it makes sense to be rolling out restaurant? Like, should operators like fast, QSR operators be thinking about, hey, let's do some restaurants with no human interaction?
Well, so we asked consumers what they think of that, and only 18% said that that's their dream come true, is to have
Okay.
a totally humanless, fully automated restaurant. So I would say those who answer yes to that question are in the minority. But at the same time, 26% of people say we know that it's on the horizon in the next few years. As soon as 2025, I could picture myself eating at a fully automated restaurant. So it's almost like they're against it, but they realize the reality of the situation, that it's probably coming sooner than we all think. So I wouldn't say, restaurants need to convert to fully automated experiences in their next generation tomorrow. But I do think it's something that people are now more open to than ever. I think your Cafe X example is a really good one because of the way that it was founded. It was founded on the principles that it could support employees to do some of the tasks that are taking them away from the service experience that people think. So the guy that founded it, I think he watched baristas making espressos, and he saw they spend most of the time pushing buttons and moving cups around, and they're not able to answer questions from the customers who are coming in, and they're not able to interact with them to the degree that people, I think, want and expect in a coffee shop experience. And so it started as a solution to that. It can do all that menial stuff, moving cups around and pushing buttons, and it can free up the employees to talk to customers, which is what, we're all hoping for in a social experience like that. So it founded in that way, and it evolved to a point where it was a fully automated experience in a place that made sense, like airports, because that's where people are at their fastest, and they want things the quickest. So I think all that is to say, fully automated experiences are to come, but there are some stair steps in order to get that. We can't click it on tomorrow. I think there's some evolution that's necessary, and by the time that 2025 rolls around, customers are going to be much more open to it than they are right now.
And I think it's important too for operators to realize that it doesn't need to be one or the other. It can be both. And thinking about your total portfolio, it does make sense to test, an automated concept within your portfolio. But in a given market, you might have multiple formats so that a consumer who isn't comfortable with the automation can choose to go to another convenient location for a different experience. And sort of that test and learn is what we're so excited about, and what we know is going to have to be a part of the strategic planning for any company in order to figure out how to innovate and have these options for consumers.
Yeah, that's a great point. For me, I'm just thinking out loud here. For me, it's about like day part. Like at lunchtime, I'm so open to technology if it means I get my food faster. I mean, I've got it, I'm ordering on the app so I can swing by and pick up the Chipotle or the Five Guys or the Jimmy John's or whatever. Yes, I have very unhealthy eating habits. But at dinner, you want to have something more relaxed. And even if it's fast casual, I still want to sit down and enjoy it there. So that could play a role.
Yeah, sometimes I'm willing to sit in the line at Starbucks in the drive-thru just to get out of the house and get away from my 10-month-old infant and free myself of what's happening at home and be in a different environment. I'm cool with waiting, listening to the radio, listening to a podcast, what have you. But other times I need my coffee very quickly. And so I'm going to order it ahead on the app, and then I'm going to pick it up wherever it makes sense. And I want to skip the line, and I don't want to take my time. So I think you're right. Day part is really is a really interesting way to look at it too.
So any final thoughts on how operators should be thinking about this, about strategy around automation, or any recommendations you guys have?
We've mentioned consumer journey. I just want to underscore that because I think it's about, not only getting that balance right that Ashley talked about, but thinking about what makes sense at every point in that customer journey. And you're going to have different journeys for different day parts, for different markets, for different consumer segments. And so being really thoughtful about that is going to be critical to figuring out what's going to work best for the consumer, and ultimately to, make the business have the best growth and be ultimately profitable.
And
That's
I
great.
would stress that automation is not just robots. Robots are the flashiest example, and we've talked a lot about them. But in our report, I don't know if you want to flash it on screen, but we asked consumers about a long list of automated technology-enabled experiences to see what sort of like pressure test how open they are to each of those. And the things, it's I think on the next page, there's things that or maybe the next one after that. Sorry, the things at the top of the list are things that we've all been forced to adopt, and they went from weak signal to ubiquity almost overnight during the pandemic. Like contactless payment with my smartphone. Places aren't taking cash anymore. They're not taking cards in some places, and so the ability to wave my phone and pay in that way is something that we didn't see 3 years ago, but now is really common, and people are very receptive to that. And in fact, they're asking for it. Or your example about QR codes, being able to order from my phone at the table without having to interact with a physical menu or interact with a person in some cases. People are super open to that too. But then and lockers, picking up things through lockers, people are open to. We've been talking about lockers for years and years with our clients. But then there are things that, are at the bottom of that gradient that maybe fewer people are receptive to now. But I think in the years to come, they're going to be much more open to, like robotics and no humans whatsoever. So just to stress the point that it's much bigger, automation is much bigger than just robots. It's a lot of little things too that increase, speed throughout the entire experience. And a lot of those things are very easy to implement as soon as tomorrow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. So, one more time, the report is automation in restaurants. You can download it at bigredrooster.com. I also think that we have a link in the chat that you can click right to get it if you're watching this live. So that's the current POV. What's up next? What are you guys working on after that?
Well, as we dove into this work, what we started to realize is the restaurant industry is kind of setting the bar around a lot of these expectations. We're seeing the most innovation happening in the restaurant space, and we're wondering if some of our friends in other sectors of retail are starting to fall behind. So that's our next point of view, is really understanding how consumers feel from a sector perspective, and if consumers are starting to feel that yes, indeed, some folks are falling behind, and therefore, what should they do about it?
Gotcha. Fascinating. That's really cool. So if folks want to check that out, that'll be on bigredrooster.com as well. Well, you came to talk about automation, but you're going to stay for the retail challenge. Are you ready for a little bit of a retail challenge? Now, Ashley's like, no, I'm not ready at all. So the way this works is we're going to have 3 questions about retail, sort of. We have a little bit of fun. You're going to get 1 point per correct question. The person with the most points after 3 wins. If you're watching along live, you can play along with us. Type your answers in the comments. If you're the first person to get the correct answer in the chat, you'll win our eternal admiration and the eternal admiration of your peers. So let's get into it. Let me pull up my retail challenge notes. First question. Well, I should say our theme this week is about technology and retail. So 3 questions about retail technology. The first one is about Apple. So as you guys know, this is the Apple flagship on 5th Avenue. The first Apple store opened in 2001. And I should say the reason why I brought this up is that American Dream Mall just announced that it's just leased space to Apple. There's going to be a flagship Apple store at the American Dream Mall, which we've been talking about a lot. The huge 555 mega mall right outside of Manhattan. So the first Apple store opened in 2001. Where was it? And actually, there were 2 Apple stores that opened pretty much simultaneously. Were the first 2 Apple stores in California and Virginia, California and New York, or Houston and New York? Ashley, I'll ask you first. Where do you think the first 2 Apple stores were? 21 years ago now.
I think it was California and Virginia.
California and Virginia. All right, Emily, what do you think?
I was thinking the same. California and Virginia. You think they must have opened one on their home turf?
Well, you are both correct. The first 2 Apple stores were at Tyson's Corners and Glendale Galleria in California. So awesome. Very good. After one round, you each have 1 point. And let's see if we have anybody. Taylor Coyne is playing along, and Taylor said California and New York. So I'm sorry, Taylor, you're wrong. Taylor is one of the co-hosts of the show, and she and Ebere are off this week. She's trying to play along and just not doing very well. So Taylor, you've got a chance to bring it back though. And Ashley and Emily have a chance to keep their winning streak going. So our next question is about Meta, the artist or the company formerly known as Facebook. Meta just opened a retail store in the Bay Area on their campus in Burlingame, California. So Meta Platforms is the official name of that company. It used to be known as Facebook, and before that was known as the Facebook. I remember the days when we used to put the in front of things. Okay, so what was the first website that Mark Zuckerberg built as a Harvard student in 2003? Was it Face-to-Face, Face Mash, or FaceNet? And Emily, I'll ask you first.
I think it was, I mean, I've seen the movie, I've read the books, I should know this. I'm thinking it was B.
Face Mash,
No,
B.
I take it back. Can I
take it back? You can take it back.
I think it was C.
FaceNet. Okay, so Emily says FaceNet. Ashley, what do you say?
I agree. FaceNet. And that was my first instinct. So,
well, you're both wrong. It's Face Mash.
Oh!
And do you guys remember what Face Mash was? It's pretty gross. It's like they would show photos of 2 Harvard students and you had to vote which one was hotter.
Yeah.
So that's the illustrious history of that company. Anywho, so the Meta store, there's one open so far, like we said, in the Bay Area. Probably more to come, but they haven't announced anything yet. It's for showcasing their metaverse technology, which is AR, VR, glasses, goggles, stuff like that. I mean, quick aside here. What do you guys think about the metaverse? Are you going to be designing stores in the metaverse like next year, or do you do that now?
My dream is to have our own Big Red Rooster version where there are 3D models of all the different store environments we've created, and you can just walk down Big Red Rooster Lane instead of ever looking at a case study again. You can just live it in the metaverse. Do you like it, James?
Oh, I do. So a customer comes and says, you need to design a new prototype for our store, and the way that they tour it is like in the metaverse.
Yeah.
I love it. That's cool. That's actually a good use case for the metaverse, because a lot of them I'm like scratching my head about, like, I don't know about this. Well, let's check into the chat. So Benjamin answered C. So Benjamin answered FaceNet. LinkedIn user answered face-to-face. So nobody got Face Mash. Nobody remembered from the Social Network. I guess that was a couple of years ago. Great movie, by the way. Ebere, one of our co-hosts, it's like his favorite movie. He loves that movie. Okay, so our third question, we've talked about Facebook, we talked about Apple, so what's next? It's Google. Google has one retail store in Chelsea as a part of their corporate campus, but they've just announced they've leased another space in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. So now they're going to have 2 retail spaces. So I guess you guys could have probably guessed this, but Google search is the most popular website in the world, according to ranking data from last month, from April. So my trivia question for you is, what is the second most popular website in the world? Is it Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube? I forget who went first last time. Was it Emily? So Ashley, you want to go first this time?
Sure. My educated guess would be Twitter. B.
Okay, so you're going with Twitter. Emily, what do you think?
YouTube.
YouTube. The correct answer is YouTube.
Mm.
The YouTube is the second most famous or most popular. So let me just tally up some points here. Ashley, you've got 1 point. Emily, you've got 2 points. So you are our winner. Congratulations. At some point, we're going to issue winner NFTs that you can put into your
Ooh.
digital wallet. And yeah, we're still joking about that, yet no one has done anything about it, because when you start to look into creating NFTs, it's actually kind of a pain. Just FYI, so the top 5 websites are: first is Google, second is YouTube, third is Facebook, fourth is Twitter, and 5 is Instagram. So nothing surprising there. I would expect all those to be in the top 5. Let's see. Benjamin guessed C, which is YouTube. So you got that correct. Good job. So I should say in the Google store, people ask like, okay, so what is the point of a Google store? Do they show you how to run like searches on Google or something? But it's actually mostly to demo like their phone, like the Pixel, and do stuff like that. What do you all think about brand stores, where it's about brand building more than, I know you've worked on stores like that. Do you think they make sense today, or are retailers still looking to do that? Or do you feel like the store today really has to sell something?
No, I definitely think that more experiential branded environments have a place. Again, I think it's about portfolio, but as we try to tell more compelling stories in the physical environment, it has to be about so much more than the transaction. And today, to get the space and make the economics work out, it's often going to be not about transaction on site. It's going to be about that branded experience. So I definitely believe that that's a huge part of where retail's headed.
Yeah, I hear you.
I agree. I can buy it online. So I feel there should be a more compelling reason in addition to that, or in place of that, to get me to go to a physical space these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of shoppers, are definitely in that boat. So we don't have to worry. We're going to have physical retail experiences for at least in our careers. Maybe at some point it will all switch over to the metaverse. But Emily, Ashley, I want to thank you so much for joining me today to talk about automation in retail. It's been a fantastic conversation. Emily, this is not your first time. We'll definitely have you back again. Ashley, would love to have you back as well. This has been fantastic.
Thanks so much.
It was fun.
All right. We'll talk to you guys again soon, I'm sure. I should mention JLL also just released a new food and beverage report. It's the top trends in F&B in the US. And specifically, we dive into casual dining, which we think is having a resurgence right now as we're coming out of the pandemic. You can download it for free at jll.com. Just go to our trends and insights section. We also are dropping a new episode of our audio podcast today called Where We Buy. Today's episode is about grocery anchored shopping centers, which are a real hot investment in the capital markets world right now. If you want to listen to that, go in your podcast app and search for Where We Buy, or you can listen online at wherewebuy.show. If you're watching right now on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, be sure to follow JLL Retail on LinkedIn. You're going to get all those notifications of new episodes and new content that we're always posting every week. So we're going to be back next week, next Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern. We're right here on LinkedIn, or you can watch us on YouTube at Everything We Know .show. On LinkedIn, we're at like I said, the JLL Retail LinkedIn page. And if you want to know everything we know about retail. We're going to tell you all of it next week.